Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays, hosted by someone's favorite film buff, Nathan. I love movies and I want to share that with you. From old originals to cult classics and foreign favorites, along with straight up drivel, WWW is your place for all things movies. Stick around and we'll leave you with a movie to watch over the weekend with your family or that special someone. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays. My name is Nathan, the host of What to Watch Wednesdays, and I'm going to introduce the watch list tonight because we have a watch list because it's called What to Watch Wednesdays. And on this watch list, we have 3 movies because the show is What to Watch Wednesdays and it's about movies, right? And do you see why? So we have that connection. And so we're going to talk about movies on the movie show tonight. And I'm going to stop with this joke lest I run it in circles for the next 4 hours. We're going to jump into our watch list tonight because all 3 of them are contained under a single theme. All 3 are directed by the British director, Sir John Boorman. And yes, he is officially called Sir. He was knighted in 2022. These 3 movies consist of Excalibur from 1981, Deliverance from 1972, and Zardoz from 1974. And before we go to the break, you may be asking the very valid question of, well, that all sounds well and good, but why are we talking about John Boorman? I've never heard of him before. Who is this? Why are you talking about him? I'll answer that question very briefly and tell you right now that John Boorman is at least significant to me, and I feel like there's some value to share that meaning to you all. Because, and I mean no exaggeration by this, without John Boorman's movie from 1967 called Point Blank, What to Watch Wednesdays would not exist. You heard me correctly. I could talk to you about, more so, tell you exactly why that is. But that's a much longer story. So just know that without John Boorman, this show would not exist. I would not be talking on 88.1 The Burg right now. Keep that in mind. And when we come back from the break, we'll jump into the first movie on our watch list. Rather than talking about that extensive story, we'll talk about the story of our first movie, that being Excalibur from 1981. So stick around for that. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our first movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Excalibur from 1981, available to rent from places such as Amazon Prime. In order to give you the brief recap of the story of Excalibur, or more so give you the basic synopsis of the plot, we follow King Uther Pendragon all the way to an aging King Arthur, who sends his knights on a quest to find the Holy Grail. But before we even get to that point, we have Uther Pendragon basically going and having an affair with the wife of his enemy. We have Merlin giving him the sword of Excalibur. We have him planting Excalibur in a stone. We have Arthur, his son, later down the line, drawing the sword from the stone. That's a lot to take in, so I'm just going to tell you right now that this movie is a very much condensed summary, or more so, retelling of the Arthurian legend, the King Arthurian legend. And what is King Arthur most known for? That's right, his drawing of the sword from the stone, that being the mighty sword, Excalibur. Hey, that's the name of the movie. Look at that. We've got a connection. We've got a connection between the two. And if I'm being completely honest with you, when I went into this movie, I may or may not have been fully expecting that. Mostly leaning towards may not have been fully expecting that, even though it's called Excalibur. That just shows you how smart I am sometimes. But enough about how smart I am and the basic plot line of the thing, because you can imagine there's all the pull the sword from the stone, there's eventually the quest for the Holy Grail, and a bunch of other stuff that happens in between, such as the appearance of Lancelot and Merlin dealing with a bunch of stuff because he's a magic wizard, blah, 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 blah. Not going to dwell on that for too much longer, because I want to talk about the actual skill and technical qualities of the movie. So first, let's talk about the skill. And rather unfortunately, when we talk about the skill, we have to talk about a lack of skill. Oh boy, oh dear, okay. So, first thing I want to say about Excalibur is I honestly feel like I didn't do a job of phoning in explaining the plotline of this movie. If I did, oopsie daisies, but I don't think I did do a phoning in job. I didn't phone it in. The movie Excalibur does seem to kind of phone it in a little bit. If I'm being completely honest with you, the actors and just the movie in general feels like it's kind of phoning in the story of King Arthur. It's not really like trying to make you care. It's more so dedicated to just telling you the story and kind of regurgitating it back out to you. Or like regurgitating feels like more of a violent verb to it. It doesn't really fit the overall feel that Excalibur kind of instills in you. Excalibur feels more like it's reciting it to you. It's more so just kind of reading it back to you, and here it is, here's the story. We're not really going to like make it interesting or fit into the film world all that perfectly. We're just kind of going to read it back to you, and you're just going to kind of listen to it. It's kind of like none of the plot points have any impact because they're just kind of phoning it in, right? So, on the one hand, that sounds bad off the bat. And yet, strangely enough, for a movie that just sits there and recites you the King Arthur legend, from what I've heard and what I've looked into, not a whole lot, but I've looked into enough to realize and hear that this movie is strangely accurate to the King Arthur legend. About as accurate as you could get for an adaptation of the King Arthur legend in Hollywood cinema movie terms, or even not Hollywood, just in the overall realm of the cinematic industry all across the globe. It's apparently a kind of accurate retelling of this specific version of the King Arthur legend, which makes it mildly unfortunate that they're all just kind of phoning it in the entire time. Because if they put a lot more heart and soul into it, it would suddenly be that perfect marriage of fans of the story and people who grew up with these stories getting a perfect retelling of it in movie form, and also having this understanding that the people making the movie were fans of it and gave it enough reverence to tell it. If I'm being completely honest, it's exactly what we've been experiencing with the Dune movies over the last 3 years. Those movies have significantly increased the positive perception towards book adaptations in the movie industry, because a lot of the book nerds who love Dune absolutely love the movies because of how accurate they are, or how much they kind of omit for the sake of timing, but how accurate they are to the source material. And I feel like there's a chance for Excalibur to be that. I can feel it in that subconscious part of my mind while watching the movie, that John Boorman, the director and producer of this movie, had this idea and this identity that he wanted to let shine through the movie. He had the story in his hands, and he just kind of phoned it in. Rather unfortunate. I will say, the acting I will call phoned in, but it's not exactly the perfect way of describing it. It's more so to draw comparisons between the acting and the overall movie itself, because the acting is legitimately a part of how a movie tends to come across. That's how it works. If I'm being really honest here, brutally and totally honest, the acting only feels phoned in because it has this very strange effect wherein you imagine your local theater troupe, right? This group of about, let's say, 15 people meeting up together, going across the state and performing at schools or amphitheaters at your local park, right? And they're given the script for a King Arthur play. And they get out on the amphitheater and they basically have to read the script for the first time while they're performing it live in front of a big audience who just gathered to see them all perform a play about King Arthur, right? Do you see what I'm getting at here? It's kind of like watching people overact all of the time because they're not familiar with what they're supposed to be doing and haven't practiced beforehand. So it comes across as stunted and with a lot of extra bravado that does not need to be there. That's really how I describe the acting. It's certainly entertaining and a very interesting effect to have. But again, like the fact that the movie just kind of phones in the actual plot beats and the overall way that the story progresses, it doesn't exactly give you the feeling of, this is King Arthur. I'm watching something I'm emotionally invested in. King Arthur's story. I'm more so just watching it because I think it's funny that I'm basically watching like underexperienced theater people perform it in a movie, right? If I wanted to see it, I would go watch it at like a theater performance. Do you see? I'd actively seek it out. When I'm trying to watch a movie, I want to see it be told well. Because you can rehearse a play and you can rehearse a movie, but one of them gets recorded permanently and one of them can be iterated on. And the theater production is not the one that can be recorded. If anything, I'm going to cut this review off, or more so just end it off by saying that one of my favorite things from Excalibur is a very random beat where King Arthur is talking to Merlin and he's saying, "Oh, will I see you again, old friend? Will I ever see you again?" And Merlin just looks at him and says, "No." In that exact tone of voice. And honestly, if I'm gonna segue nicely into our next movie, is the way I'm going to approach the second movie on our watch list tonight, that being Deliverance from 1972. So stick around for that. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our second movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Deliverance from 1972, available to rent from places such as Amazon. To give you the basic plot summary, we follow four men who are not exactly friends, but more so just colleagues or, I guess, friends by association, we'll call them. These four men end up heading out into the wilderness for a canoe trip. This canoe trip is meant to go up a river that will soon be blocked off by a dam. So they head up and go into a small little town up in the mountains with a lot of, I guess you could call them hicks, or more so just rural living people, right? And they're just planning on going down the river in a canoe. What could go wrong? Well, everything goes wrong when they get accosted by said mountain-dwelling people. They also are accosted by each other because they're not exactly friends. They're just friends by proxy, and so sparks fly in between them. And they are also accosted by the raging rapids of the river as they paddle down it. How wonderful! You'd think that going in a canoe for at least 3 people who are just from the city and have no canoeing experience whatsoever would turn out perfectly fine. But here we are with things going wrong. Who could have ever perceived this happening? Oh, no way. Okay. Now we need to get serious here for a second. Deliverance, in case you are not familiar, is a very notorious movie. It is notorious for one specific reason, and that is for a scene that happens about 40 minutes in. Because as I mentioned, they are accosted by the people who live in the hills. There's 2 men who come by and stop 2 of these people who are just going in a canoe, right? One of them is played by Jon Voight, one of them is played by Ned Beatley. Great. Ned Beatley, unfortunately, gets the brunt end of this being accosted situation in a way that is unsavory, to say the least. Again, if you are unfamiliar with this, don't make yourself familiar with what happens in this film. If you are familiar with it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Deliverance contains a scene wherein Ned Beatley's character loses his innocence in both the emotional and explicit way. And for that reason, I have to give a strong content warning. Be warned if you are interested in watching this movie. Just be aware that that scene exists at around the 40-minute mark. How to know? It's about the 37 minutes in. They row ashore and get out to take a quick break. And things go very much overturned canoe, if you would call it that. Bad analogy, but it lightens the mood a little bit because I failed to really give you a full description of it. What I'm going to give you a very extensive description of is why this scene did not need to be in Deliverance whatsoever. If you are familiar, you again know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not, let me tell you why exactly this scene should not have been in Deliverance without really telling you what the scene is. First off, it is unnecessary. It goes on for way too long. It does not fit the setting of the movie whatsoever. It does not affect the characters in any meaningful way. It ruins the rest of the movie, and honestly, it's kind of lazy. From the way I described it, you'd think I was talking about two completely different scenes that are not related to each other, even remotely. Don't worry, I'm talking about the same one. This explicit scene is lazy. Okay, let me back up and say that again, this level of explicit nature does not fit a wilderness survival story set on a river in a canoe. It does not establish the river or anything else around them as a threat, just the people being horrible. On the one hand, that is good at establishing tension. On the other hand, if you're going to do something like that, you need to have it affect the characters more than the characters in Deliverance are affected by it. They are affected by it pretty much in the immediate aftermath, but that's the immediate aftermath. And they have to deal with the fact that they've basically, I mean, it is 40 minutes into a hour and 20-minute movie. So I'll just say that the immediate aftermath of it involves something kind of escalating a lot more. And I think that's the reason why they included the scene. They wanted it to be a flip-flop, so when that escalation happens, you're not thrown off by it too much. It feels like a progression. They failed at that significantly because it's too explicit to make that progression seem natural. I'm trying really hard to work around this. I don't know if I'm doing a perfect job, but you should understand that, in my opinion, a movie about a canoe trip with 4 guys in the middle of the Georgia wilderness does not need a scene where one of them loses their innocence in a very explicit fashion. What they needed to do to make the escalation after that loss of innocence scene work was what they needed to do instead of that loss of innocence would be something along the lines of involving the environment, such as, let's say, maybe using a stick. Oh, that's normal. Maybe just, I don't know, being more violent rather than explicit. Or, hear me out here, what if they attempted to drown the main characters? You know, they're traveling in a river on a canoe, right? It thematically ties in more than what they did in the movie. And I'd blame the director, John Boorman, for choosing to go with a scene like that if I didn't know that it was in the original book that this movie is based off of, meaning that I have to call out the original author of Deliverance. Of course, that means something on a college radio show about movies, but still, I place the blame on the author of Deliverance rather than the filmmakers. He should have come up with a better idea of how to switch around the tone in his story. Or he should have figured out how to make it impact the characters more. Either or might have worked, but I'm more on the side of removing it altogether. Because not only does it not work, it requires me giving a heavier content warning than I normally would give for things like this. And it's rather unfortunate considering the fact that Deliverance, aside from that scene, is wonderful at getting across everything it sets out to do and is really good and engaging and thrilling. And I would recommend it if you're not that opposed to watching a scene like that, then I could recommend it. But because of that scene being in there, you just kind of have to bump up against it. I'd still recommend it if you have the stomach for it. It just comes with that massive disclaimer. Along with it, we have the music being pretty good. And we have, again, the setting being good, and all 4 of those main characters, man. Very good casting. We've got John Voight, we've got Ned Beatley, of course, but we've also got Burt Reynolds, of all people. The wonderful Burt Reynolds. And we've got, what was the other one? Hang on, I'm checking it out. Ronnie Cox. All 4 of them are perfect. And this was Burt Reynolds' big break. So many good things about Deliverance. But that one scene gets in the way. But that's just the way we run our course here on What to Watch Wednesdays. And I can at least guarantee you that there won't be one scene that ruins the whole movie for our next film, that being Zardoz. Because let me tell you, not just one scene ruins the movie Zardoz. So stick around after the break, where I jump into that. 88 won the Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our third and final movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Zardoz from 1974, available to rent on places such as Amazon Prime and YouTube. Now, let's jump into the plot summary of Zardoz. No, we're not gonna. Okay, time to break the mold a little bit. Break the mold, whatever. We're gonna break something. I'm gonna break your minds, or blow your minds, one of the two terms. One of them is incorrect and one of them is correct, and I think I've got them mixed up. At any rate, ladies and gentlemen of the listening audience, if I could at least ask you to indulge me for a moment, for your entertainment, and for my vicarious entertainment through you getting a kick out of what I'm about to ask of you, if you would please look something up on your Google, your internet, your device that you are listening to this on, or you are simply having nearby while you're in the car, hopefully not while you're driving. If you're driving, please do not do this. Please look up the following term: Zardoz space Sean Connery, the famous actor who played James Bond in the original James Bond and a few movies after that. We've got Seanconnery, Sean Connery. And I want you to take a look at the images that show up in this Google search of yours. Okay? Are you able to look at this? I'll wait. We'll wait here for just a little bit. While we're waiting, I'm going to describe this to people who are possibly driving and cannot look this up. Because no shame in that. I don't want you to endanger yourself. Please do not. Sean Connery in the movie Zardoz wears what I can only describe as a red superhero Speedo with two bandoliers, you know, those kinds of like bullet belts that people in Western movies wear. Yeah, one of those. He wears two of those across his chest, massive boots, and is just holding a revolver, and he's got a very long ponytail. Sean Connery, the man who played James Bond, everybody. Wonderful costume choice. Now that we're all on the same page, I hope at this stage, for those of you who have looked it up and seen the image in front of your face, and for those of you who are driving and are now wondering what on earth I am talking about, and you're like, that sounds crazy. How insane is that? That sounds hokey and crazy. That costume choice is not the craziest thing about Zardoz from 1974. If anything, no. Full stop, full blown. I am not kidding when I tell you that costume choice, like I'm saying Detroit. That costume choice is the least crazy thing about Zardoz. If anything, it's the most normal. Okay, now that we're on the same page, now we get to jump into the plot summary of Zardoz from 1974. On Earth, in the far future, at some time of the year 2299, let's call it, we follow the fake god Zardoz, who is a floating mask head in the sky over the desolate wasteland that has become the Earth. He brainwashes his exterminators into killing the brutals, these crazy cavemen-like people who are still human beings, keep in mind. And we also follow Zardoz as he travels back to his masters, that being the immortal Eternals, still human beings, by the way, who live in material excess on the outskirts of something. Okay, now Sean Connery is an exterminator for Zardoz, who goes and kills and enslaves the brutals. I am speaking factually here. This is in the plot summary of Zardoz. That is the plot of Zardoz. I bet you're wishing that I just stuck with the costume. But no. Bonkers. Bonkers, bonkers, bonkers. What am I watching? Is the thing that kept running through my head over and over and over and over again while watching Zardoz. I just kept asking, what is going on? What am I watching? Am I losing my mind? Is this real? How could this possibly be real? With all of that being said, keep in mind that everything I just described in the plot is not told with tact or presence or establishment. Some of it is half explained. Some of it is not even like given to you and just kind of stated after the fact with no proper introduction. But most of the significant stuff is thrown at you through really poorly done exposition dumps, my favorite form. And there's about 8 of them. If I'm being conservative here, about 8 exposition dumps in the entirety of the movie for an hour and 40-minute movie. 8 is too many for any movie. Keep that in mind. And even then, it's still not enough. Oh no. Now, this is where I change the course drastically. I'm gonna blow your minds even more than I already have, hopefully. I hope your mind is blown, proportionately blown. I've been sitting here talking to you about the craziest thing possible that sounds awful and horrific and badly made, and yes, it is all of those things. It's awful, it's horrid, it's just so absurd and strange, and the immortals are also human beings, but they live forever, and they are aged physically in years as punishment. Instead of being killed, they cannot die, they are immortal. They are regrown in the massive shiny triangle, and Sean Connery is wearing a Speedo, and I cannot recommend Zardoz from 1974 enough to you people. I beg of you, I recommend to you to watch Zardoz and spend your valuable time on this Earth planet of watching the movie Zardoz. What am I talking about? Well, let me tell you very, very clearly and confidently, dear listeners, that I can tell you right now that Zardoz is my personal pick for the best ever So Bad It's Good movie ever. Full stop. I can't get enough of it. I loved every second of it. It was so awful that I could not stop laughing. I was entertained for days, and I watched it once at night. How does that happen? I don't know. There's at least 20 minutes of a good movie in there. Those 20 minutes aren't in a row, but they're in there. I'm losing my mind. I've lost my mind. I apologize profusely for anybody listening in a car, listening to me basically have a breakdown, but I mean it. Everything I just explained to you, I mean all of it. Zardoz is the best So Bad It's Good movie I have seen. I love it. It's awful. It's despicable, despisable, despicable, terrible. Please, for everything you hold dear, please watch it. I can't recommend it enough. If you are into schlocky nonsense and want to turn your brain off, this will forcibly turn your brain off for the entirety of its duration. Wonderful. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of the show of What to Watch Wednesdays for tonight. Thank you for listening in. What to Watch Wednesdays will be back on next Wednesday here on 88.1 The Burg from 8 to 9 p.m. as it always is. And that will be the last show of the quarter right before winter break. I know it's finals week, but if you have the time, please do tune in. And if you also have the time, this Saturday from 8 to 10 p.m., please tune in to What to Watch Weekends, which will be here on 88.1 The Burg as well. It'll be a great time. Please do stop by. On top of that, please do follow What to Watch Wednesdays at What to Watch Wednesdays, all in word, no caps, no spaces. That will be both on Instagram.com or whatever, however it is, Instagram, and on YouTube. Type in at What to Watch Wednesdays, all one word, no caps, no spaces, and you will in fact get the What to Watch Wednesdays YouTube channel, which will have episodes of the show from earlier in the year constantly being uploaded to that channel every Wednesday for the next couple weeks, for the next few weeks, for the next couple months. So please go check that out. And with that, I will be back on What to Watch Wednesdays next Wednesday from 8 to 9 p.m. telling you what to watch. Good night, everybody.